Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today regarding Bill S5. As you heard, I am the Director of Policy with the Non-Smokers' Rights Association, and my colleague is the Senior Policy Analyst. We have both been with NSRA for more than 10 years, and I personally have worked in tobacco control for 27 years. NSRA is a national non-profit organization that has worked exclusively in tobacco control since the early 1970s. Our name reflects the fact that when we began our work, the key issue was protecting non-smokers from secondhand smoke. Since that time, our perspective has evolved, and we now focus much of our work on the root cause of the tobacco epidemic, the tobacco industry, and its strategies to promote tobacco use and undermine tobacco control. NSRA has been at the forefront of many significant tobacco control reforms over the past 4 decades, including campaigns for the Federal Tobacco Act, world precedent-setting graphic package health warnings, and for tobacco tax increases, just to name a few. NSRA strongly supports Bill S5. It provides a long overdue framework to legalize and control the sale of e-cigarettes with nicotine, and it includes important amendments to the Tobacco Act to provide the legislative authority to implement plain and standardized tobacco packaging. And with the Chair's permission, we would like to share with the committee a mock-up of what we see to be plain and standardized packaging.
To be fully certain that we are complying with all the rules of the Senate, I'm going to ask you to set them aside, and I will tell the senators that they can pick them up at the break. But we do not normally use props within the issue unless it's illustrative of something that we are researching as a study.
Okay. Nonetheless, there are a number of amendments that we believe are critical to strengthen the bill and ensure that it fulfills the government's intent. Committee members should have a copy of our detailed list of amendments. Given time constraints, I'm only going to highlight a few. I'm going to begin with the provision to establish legislative authority for plain and standardized packaging measures. As drafted, S5 prohibits a limited number of promotional elements on tobacco packaging, and I quote, the use of terms, expressions, logos, symbols, and illustrations. We want to ensure that the government has the authority to enact all of the prohibitions outlined in the plain and standardized packaging consultation document. So we are seeking an amendment that would explicitly expand the list of prohibited promotional elements. Tobacco companies have increasingly exploited every possible packaging design element to minimize the impact of the health warnings, to downplay health concerns and convince smokers that they can choose a less harmful brand or brand variant rather than quitting, and to continue promoting a variety of brand identities to target new smokers. We believe that in addition to expressions and symbols, it is essential that plain and standardized packaging also prohibit variations in package size, shape, and opening style. It is also essential that the government limit brand and brand variant names so that companies cannot use brand names, for example, to connote positive lifestyle or body image associations. You will likely hear from staunch opponents to plain and standardized packaging from tobacco companies and their allies in the Canadian Convenience Stores Association and the National Coalition Against Contraband Tobacco that plain packaging doesn't work, that it causes contraband to increase in Australia, and that it will fuel the contraband market here at home. In fact, none of these statements is true. NSRA has prepared a fully referenced document that debunks all of the myths about plain and standardized packaging that tobacco companies and their front groups are spreading around the world. We have provided an electronic copy, and we've given a hard copy to the clerk today. The comprehensiveness and thus effectiveness of the plain and standardized packaging regulations that Canada ultimately mandates may depend in part on the extent to which tobacco industry lobbying does not interfere with policy making. To this end, we feel it is very important to amend the Tobacco Act to ensure greater public awareness of tobacco industry activities to undermine public health policy, in partial fulfillment of Canada's obligations under the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. Note that the term tobacco industry is defined very broadly in guidelines to the global treaty and includes industry allies in the retail sector and others. I believe that committee members received last night a copy of an internal Imperial Tobacco presentation, this one here, that proves the extent to which the Canadian Convenience Stores Association and NCACT play key roles in tobacco companies' strategies to prevent tobacco control measures. Our amendment would require that companies disclose to the Health Minister information on activities and expenditures related directly or indirectly to influencing health policy, and that all such information be available to the public unless prohibited by the regulations. I will mention only briefly two other amendments that we believe are essential. We need amendments to ensure that herbal shisha and water pipe use are fully covered by the provisions of the Act, and we also believe it is important to prohibit tobacco promotion through the sale of tobacco-branded accessories and non-tobacco products and services. Turning now to vaping products. NSRA supports most of the measures in S5 to regulate the marketing and sale of vaping products, both with and without nicotine. However, we believe that despite Health Canada's stated intention to balance risk with access, Bill S5 focuses disproportionately on the risks of vaping products without adequate consideration of the potential benefits, health benefits and economic benefits of shifting large numbers of Canadians away from smoking. Health Canada has stated that vaping products are likely less harmful alternatives to tobacco use, and this is incorrect. Although the extent to which vaping is less harmful than smoking remains a topic of spirited debate amongst scientists, the evidence to date shows that e-cigarettes are less harmful than cigarettes. Research also indicates that beliefs that vaping is as risky as smoking may impede smokers from trying and regularly using e-cigarettes, choosing to continue smoking instead. While it is important for people to know that vaping products are not inherently safe to use, it is equally important for smokers to know that less harmful choices exist. Smokers desperately need and have a right to reliable information about vaping products on which to make informed decisions. As drafted, Bill S5 provides no assurance that regulations would require the provision of relative risk information, which clearly runs counter to the goal of the Tobacco and Vaping Products Act, and I quote, to protect the health of Canadians in light of conclusive evidence implicating tobacco use in the incidence of numerous debilitating and fatal diseases. To this end, we have proposed a number of amendments that would permit and indeed require both companies and the government to provide accurate relative risk information. We are also recommending a number of amendments to limit the promotion of vaping products, including a ban of lifestyle advertising and an essential provision to establish regulatory authority that would permit the government to adjust controls on vaping product advertising and promotion in response to prevalence data and market developments. Thank you for your time and attention, and we look forward to your questions this afternoon.